Well, the next speaker that we're going to bring up is going to introduce the many speakers that we have for you tonight that have a plethora of information that they want to share with you. We hope you're able to receive it and just know that it is important that you can share this information as well. So once you retain all this information you're about to receive, share it with others who did not come tonight. So I would like to recognize the man that I think has so much involvement in this community. He was actually named Pitt County's Citizen of the Year for 2022. He is such an amazing person. Yeah, I'm talking about you. He's like, what? And the fact that he is so passionate about this community is also important. So the reason why he is here is, of course, to introduce all the great speakers, but I just also want people to know how important he is to this area and what he has done in this in Pitt County for so many years. So we thank him as well. But I want to bring up to talk about the speakers and the other wonderful program members that you're going to see in a moment. We have Tom. Come on up, Tom Kilikowski.
Thank you. Lynette does my public relations. I hope all of you had the opportunity this evening to take advantage of the testing that was going on here. Because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have known that my body mass index was 36. I told them I thought there was a calculation error, and they went back and corrected that and said, yeah, it's not it's a little under 25 actually. So I thought, okay, all right, that sounds a lot better. But we've got a great group of speakers tonight because, as Rodney said, too many of us take our health for granted. I know I have for too many years, and one of the things that a doctor said to me a few years ago, because I was talking to him, I said, I'm really into fitness, I like to exercise and all that, and he said, Tom, you cannot outrun your diet. You can't just add another mile a day and then forget about your diet. He said, as you age, he said it's about 20% exercise, 80% what you put in your body. So just a word of advice, you can't outrun your diets. You got to take care of what you eat. And we got to see tonight that eating healthy, there's a misnomer, eating healthy tastes bad, right? Most of us think that way, okay, it's going to be tofu, right? You know, something like that. But as the ladies demonstrated back there this evening, that eating healthy can actually taste very good. It's nourishing, it helps us fuel our bodies, and at the same time doesn't taste so bad. So I encourage you, if you want, go have some seconds because they got plenty of food back there. All right, so now's the opportunity for me to introduce. I'm just going to introduce all the speakers at once, so it's not like a jack-in-the-box, me getting up and down. So I'll introduce them all at once, even though they're not going to speak all at once. So the first one I'm going to introduce actually had to leave this evening. So those of you that had your health screening probably got to meet Dr. Paul Shackelford. Dr. Shackelford has been a member of ECU Health for a long time. He's also on the faculty of the Brody School of Medicine. For 10 years was a senior vice president for medical affairs. And right now he's currently leading community outreach effort to address the health and socioeconomic challenges faced by members of our community. As we know here in Eastern North Carolina, and you'll hear from some of the other speakers, we have a higher incidence of some things in Eastern North Carolina than the general population in the United States. And a lot of those things are controllable risk factors. And that's some of the things that Dr. Shackelford is trying to get us to understand. Things like our A1C. Okay, it doesn't necessarily say that you have diabetes, but if your A1C levels are high, you may be more predisposed to it. Just like if your blood pressure is high, you may be more predisposed to hypertension. So helping us understand some of the risk factors. So Dr. Shackelford had to leave for another engagement. I'd like to also introduce then a couple other speakers. We've got with us Dr. John Silvernail, or many call him Dr. John. John was born and raised on the east shore of the Hudson River in Columbia County, New York. And he's board certified in family practice, general preventive medicine, public health, and occupational medicine. He moved to Pitt County about 11 years ago now, right, John? And served as faculty at the Brody School of Medicine for about 7 years until there was another calling, maybe a higher calling. He took over in summer of 2019 as the Pitt County Health Director. Remember him as the sort of as the voice and the image of COVID here not that many years ago, right, Dr. Silvernail? So he that tenure lasted about 4 years, and Dr. Silvernail has recently decided that he's going to do some other, take a pause from what he was doing and do some other things in life. So, but one of the interesting facts about John is, in addition to his medical career, He's a longtime firefighter, fire officer, and fire instructor. In fact, he's been doing it for 40 years, he told me. 40 years. He grew up in a family where that was what his father did, was a volunteer firefighter, and John followed in his father's footsteps. So he's also the Chief Medical Officer Emeritus of the New York State Urban Search and Rescue Team, and responded with his team to the collapse of the World Trade Center on that fateful day of 9/11/2001. So locally, Dr. Silvernell is an active member of the Simpson Rural Fire Department here in Pitt County. So you'll hear from him in just a few moments. Then also we'll be hearing this evening from Dr. David Michael. He's a general internist and certified lifestyle medicine physician with over 25 years of experience as a primary care physician in Eastern North Carolina. He must have started young because he doesn't look like he's been doing it for 25 years, does he? So as a primary care physician, he became interested in clinical informatics when using a predictive analytics tool to change behavior and identify modifiable risk. So he also became the first Chief Medical Informatics Officer at Vidant Health, now ECU Health, and board certified in the new specialty of clinical informatics in 2014. So after discovering this new emerging field of lifestyle medicine, he's applied his clinical time and skills and the passion of improved health for each patient. He became board certified by the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine recently, and in 2023, so this year, he stepped out of his full-time sort of executive role so that he could pursue his clinical passion as the medical director of the Lifestyle Medicine Clinic at ECU Health. So we are fortunate to have him here with us this evening. And last but not least on those that I get the pleasure of introducing is Dr. Christina Bowen. She's board certified in family medicine, integrative medicine, which I had to look up the definition, Dr. Bowen, what integrative medicine is, hospice and palliative care and lifestyle medicine. She's the medical director of the Center for Healthy Living at ECU's Outer Banks Hospital, where the focus is on integrative and lifestyle medicine for team members in the Outer Banks community. So she currently serves as a new position as the Chief Well-Being Officer for ECU Health. So her passion was fueled during the pandemic to extend her healing practices for patients to the ECU Health team, her colleagues in the health system, and she's got some amazing things to talk about that's going on, starting within the ECU Health community, but hopefully expanding to the greater Eastern North Carolina area. So please welcome, first on our program here will be Dr. John Silvernell. Talk to us.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, folks. If I wasn't old, fat, and crazy, I'd be perfect. A lot of what I have done over the years has been men's health. Before I came down here, I ran a practice in New York that met the needs, the health needs of the volunteer fire service in the Hudson Valley. And each year I examined thousands of firefighters, most of whom were men, and for 29 fire departments across 4 counties in the Hudson Valley. Many times those exams were easy to do. They were easy for me to do. They were easy for the examinee. Sometimes they were not. Sometimes we found significant things at these exams. And once I diagnosed a testicular cancer at a fire department exam. I diagnosed a probable prostate cancer at a fire department exam. And then a melanoma or skin cancer at one of these exams. So I guess the message is, and Rodney didn't tell me how long we got for these. 2 minutes? I guess the message in that is to engage with the healthcare system, to in one way, shape, or form, to make sure you get to the doctor or some other healthcare provider to have that screening exam, to make sure they look at you with a fresh eye and look for these things, because these diseases do turn up in us. There are risk factors that come with the work that we do, sometimes with the hobbies we engage in. Sometimes there are risk factors based on family history. And folks, we need to do that and address that. And where most women have the tie to the gynecologist and getting a pap smear every year, getting sort of that annual or every couple of year well woman exam, most of us don't. So if you do need an exam for your employment, if that's a firefighter exam, a DOT driver exam, a law enforcement officer exam, take advantage of that. Get that exam done and get those eyes looking at you. And sometimes it's good if it's a different pair of eyes than your regular doc, because they see you in a different way when we look at you from that occupational health standpoint. But engage with your regular doc too. It's important that you've got that medical home. I was a family physician first and then became an occupational health physician. So engage with your family doc, get those screenings done based on your age, your family history risk factors, and maybe even your occupational risk factors. And I hope you enjoy the program tonight. I'll end there. Thank you. Hand that off to you. There
Thank
go.
you so much. Thank you all for having us tonight. This is such a blessing to get to talk to you. Dr. Michael and I kind of want to pinch ourselves so we get to talk at this in a church and talk to you about the importance of preventing and reversing some of the diseases that we see in the United States, but we really see an increased prevalence in Eastern North Carolina. And so the good news is we're excited to share with you about ways, just like Tom was saying, fueling your body with things like clean eats, healthy food, how that can actually prevent a lot of the things that we see in Eastern North Carolina. Would you like to add something, Dr. Michael?
No, that's a great introduction.
Okay, all right. So we are going to, the mission of ECU Health is to care for the health and well-being of Eastern North Carolina. And I just got out of the line, and Dr. Coles told me it's going to there's a fire that's going to get me if I don't stand right here. Someone would be really, well-being is truly our mission for our patients and the communities of Eastern North Carolina. And to speak to Tom's point, well-being is also our mission for our team members. So this is something we're really passionate about ECU Health. We start with our team, our family, and it ripples out into our communities and our patients. So chronic disease is something that we know, I'm going to have to use these slides because I can't see that, in the United States we're really plagued by. So I don't know if you all can read those statistics, but 6 in 10 Americans have a chronic disease, right? 4 in 10 Americans have 2 or more chronic diseases. And what that often means, if you have a chronic disease, usually a lot of medications come along with that, right? And often those have some side effects as well. So 38% of Americans will be diagnosed with cancer, and cancer is one of the things that lifestyle modifications actually prevents. So it's pretty incredible. Half of all Americans have cardiovascular disease, and 1 in 3 Americans have prediabetes. It's so amazing to hear that you had the screening that Dr. Shackelford was providing earlier, because what we know is 88 million Americans have what we call insulin resistance or prediabetes. And the crazy part about it is 90% of them don't know that they have prediabetes, because just to speak to this point, we don't get those screenings that Dr. Silvernail was saying. Women, a lot of times we'll go get our annual screenings. It's so important that you take advantage of those and you get your checkups regularly to get to assure that that's not something that you're dealing with. 34 million people have type 2 diabetes. And obesity is another thing that we really see in our country, but really in Eastern North Carolina, that's something that unfortunately we know leads to things like prediabetes. It leads to high blood pressure. It leads to, I'm married to an orthopedic surgeon, it also leads to needing joint replacements sometimes, right? Because our joints are just, we're carrying a little more weight than we should. So a lot of things that the good news is we have a lifestyle medicine clinic, and we have lifestyle medicine that's practiced in the United States right here in Pitt County in Greenville. So Dr. Michael's going to share a little bit more about lifestyle medicine.
And he said that I've been practicing for about 25 years, but I don't think that's actually that long ago. But when Dr. Bowen talked about the obesity rates and the diabetes rates, when I graduated medical school, there wasn't a state in the United States that had obesity rates greater than 20%. Now there isn't a state that has one less than 20%. So we've seen a significant change in that chronic disease over the last 25 years, and especially seeing the increased rate of diabetes, because we didn't have this rate of diabetes or obesity just 25 years ago. And as a primary care physician, one of the things that always frustrated me was it seems like medication was the only tool that I had in my toolbox other than a procedure. And we know that prescriptions and procedures can improve, and we know that they save lives. But did you know that even change in lifestyle can not only help with management of chronic disease, but it can also prevent and sometimes even reverse chronic disease? And that was one of the revelations that I discovered that Dr. Bowen and I we actually met at one of the lifestyle medicine conferences in Boston about 7 years ago at the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine, and became passionate about coming back and bringing that to Eastern North Carolina.
Oh, I love this.
So I'll often use this slide in my lifestyle medicine clinic, and I'll ask the patient, if this is your kitchen, what would be the first thing that you would do when you walk into this kitchen? And I have not had anyone say anything other than shut the faucet off. Well, if you think of that as chronic disease, this is what I felt like I was doing when I was practicing traditional medication or traditional medicine, and where each mop is another medication, it's another procedure, and many of us in medical school hadn't even been trained efficiently how to turn the faucet down or turn the faucet off. But if you think about this in the setting of chronic disease, it's certainly natural that the first reaction would be to shut the faucet off, which I think of that as a cure or reversal. You still have to manage the mess on the floor. But lifestyle medicine is about really focusing not just on the floor, but on the faucet itself. When we look at what we call living smarter, living longer, statistically, the World Health Organization says that about 80% of heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes and 40% of cancer are actually preventable with lifestyle changes. And that seems really remarkable. But this is science and evidence-based in lifestyle medicine. And one of the key lifestyle medicine scientific papers that we refer to is with an intensive lifestyle program. Dr. Bowen mentioned prediabetes. We've seen intensive lifestyle for patients with prediabetes have a 58% reduction in their progression to diabetes. And when you compare that to metformin, which is a very common medication that we use for prediabetes and diabetes, that's almost double the rate that you see with the medications.
We have to talk about this together because we both love it.
Yes.
You go first.
It's interesting because Dr. Ferguson and Dr. Bowen and I were talking about his passion with the Blue Zones and his recognition of the Blue Zones several years ago. So the story is that the National Geographic hired a journalist to find the Fountain of Youth. And what he did, his name was Dan Buettner, and this is about 20 years ago, he found 5 communities around the world who had the highest percentage of individuals that lived to be 100. Now, interestingly, 4 out of 5 of those communities were under the poverty level. So it wasn't great access to Whole Foods, grocery stores or the closest academic medical center that led to a lot of this longevity. And so we want to tie what they've learned in the Blue Zones to what we do in lifestyle medicine.
Yeah. And so I think just to Tom's point, I wanted to just speak to this a little bit. A lot of, you'll see up here, this is the Power 9. So these are 9 behaviors. When the epidemiologists studied these 5 regions, they said, these people, you can look on the map. Geographically, they are not near one another. However, they share these 9 behaviors and have people living into their 100. They're thriving, you all. They're like, Dr. Ferguson was saying, oh man, I loved it when I saw this presentation because it's little ladies that are 103 carrying in a stack of magazines. It's older men walking on a mountain, climbing at 95. So really living later into life and thriving. And all of these behaviors were common. amongst these areas. So this is a book that is incredible. It's called the Blue Zones Challenge, and we actually Dr. Michael and I partnered, and we thought, does Eastern North Carolina really want to hear about this? Do they want to hear about the Blue Zones? So we started with our team members, and we had in 1 week 496 people sign up to take the Blue Zones Challenge with us. We have well over 100 people each week that have tuned in for the last 6 weeks to learn about what we're going to talk about. It's really the principles of lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine came about, it's about 20 years ago too, roughly. And it really uses a whole food, plant predominant diet, exactly what you're eating at Clean Eats, right? So 2/3 of your plate, vegetables, fruits, beans, seeds, grains, and nuts. It focuses on regular physical activity. So some of my patients will say, I don't like to exercise, Dr. Bowen. It's about moving your body. It's really about trying to decrease sitting as much, right? So moving your body. Restorative sleep, stress management, avoidance of risky substances, right? Alcohol, drugs, all kinds of things that really aren't going to help our bodies to thrive. And then positive social connections, and Dr. Michael and I always put in there, and a really strong spiritual faith base is another thing that they found in the Blue Zones that was common, really strong faith as well. And you know, it's the thing that I love about lifestyle medicine is it really is a relationship between the patient and the provider. And so it's you all coming together on a journey together to really hit your goals for what do you want to look like? What does it look like to thrive in your life? So the next slide, we'll go over just those in a little bit more detail. So the nutrition really is very much like you would find at Clean Eats, really focusing on, I talked with a dietitian and she said, you know, plan your meal around the vegetables and beans and fruits and seeds and things as such that you're going to eat, and think of meat as a side dish, right? So really getting in all that fiber, it's so very important. Sleep, foundational. I can probably say that to anybody. If anybody in here has had really young children, you're very acutely aware of what sleep deprivation feels like that, right? Sleep is so very, very important to us, right? And exercise, regular physical activity, just like we went over, stress management. Stress is really a part of life, but good stress and bad stress, it's really important that we have positive coping strategies. And we're not reaching for things that are going to harm our bodies. And then social connection, exactly like what you're doing right now. It is so important. One of the things that we found from the pandemic is just really knowing how important those social connections are. And one of the things we've seen over the last 20 years is the number of social connections that people have is slowly decreasing, and that it really is detrimental to our overall health. There was a big study out of Harvard, that fancy university, that showed that's one of the #1 predictors for how well you're going to be later in life is your number of social connections. Next. And this just speaks to why do I want to eat a bunch of plants? That's what I've had patients say, Dr. Bowen, I hate all vegetables. I'm like, all vegetables? Well, I like corn. I'm like, that's a vegetable. Let's start with corn or carrots or green beans. It's so important. I can tell you, and Dr. Michael, I know you would say this, I had a group visit yesterday for 6 weeks. They focused on doing these 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. I had 2 patients drop their hemoglobin A1C from a diabetic level to a pre-diabetic level in 6 weeks by practicing this. And do you see that all the time, Dave?
I saw a gentleman that I saw back this last week who, when I first saw him about 2 or 3 months ago, his hemoglobin A1C was 9.1. When I saw him this week, it was 6.7, and he was on less medication now than he was when I first saw him.
It's incredible, you know? I mean, and you know, the neat thing about it is your numbers get better, but what people tell you is, I feel great. One of my patients in group visit, she's 70 years old, and she said, I feel the best I've ever felt in my whole life. That's amazing, right? It's optimizing your well-being. It improves cholesterol. It helps maintain a healthy weight, right? We actually don't want a BMI of 36 that Tom just said they falsely were accusing him of having. Getting that BMI into a healthy level. Prevention of heart disease, right? You actually can. You heard Dr. Michael, 80% of heart disease can be prevented. That's incredible. Cancer reduction, it improves cognitive function. It can help prevent dementia. and helps with diabetes, can help with reflux, pain. The list goes on and on and on. So how do you get started, Dr. Michael?
Well, I love this quote. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And we talk about this in the Lifestyle Medicine Clinic. In fact, I was at a talk not too long ago that the ECU baseball coach always tells his players, let's get 1% better every day.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about, is how do we start that journey in the right direction? And I'm amazed at how open that patients are that have diabetes or pre-diabetes in listening and trying to make those lifestyle changes. She mentioned that we have the pillars, and oftentimes we find that stress or social connectedness or the lack thereof is the first thing that we have to work on before we even start to try the exercise or the nutrition. So it's really taking that holistic approach. Set goals, provide the feedback, but do it with someone. What is that quote that you always say?
I've lots
if you
of
want to
them,
go,
Dave.
if you want to go a long distance,
Go alone, but if you want to go go together,
yes.
basically. Have a tribe. That's one of the things when you look at the Blue Zones, when you look at that Power 9, is that, let me take that back, they have a tribe, right? They have somebody that's looking out for them, accountability partners, a Blue Zone buddy. So we have some handouts in the back that are, and this is a QR code we developed special for this tonight. This is our Get Your Health Back on Track. It's our passport to health. If you scan that, you can download it to your phone, and it goes over all the screenings for men that are age appropriate and a lot of other wonderful tips. Also in the back, we brought some handouts for the Lifestyle Medicine Clinic where Dr. Michael practices, and we have an amazing July 11th. We have a cooking class. We have something called culinary medicine where you can learn how to cook this food that is incredibly healthy for you. So please come and check us out there. We don't want to be sales pitchy, but this truly will change the health and well-being of Eastern North Carolina. And so this is a hill we're going to die on, isn't it?
That's
We're
right.
going to keep talking about it in Eastern North Carolina because we believe in it. So a lot of great resources for you if you want to check it out. Game Changers is a great movie. Obviously, I'm not a guy, but Dr. Michael was like, you got to tell them about Game Changers. It really resonates with men.
Has anybody seen the Game Changers documentary?
It is, you guys should have a showing of that here. It's really wonderful, and it goes over the health benefits of eating a plant-predominant diet. So thank you for having us. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much. Take advantage of the resources. You don't have to wait for us. This is available on Amazon, so if you want to find your own little tribe or group and go through the Blue Zones Challenge, we encourage you to do so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Let's give all our presenters a hand as well. I hope you all got something out of that. Was that not good? That was really good. I've learned a lot. I know people talk about, all the things that we need for our health. Many of it's already growing for us. So to just have that echoed by Dr. Michael and Christy Bowen, thank you guys, and Dr. Silvernail, thank you for also reminding the men how important it is to then get their screenings, to then check on themselves, make sure that you're okay. So all that's been very good. But we're going to continue on because we have one more important speaker as well who's going to take the podium in just a moment. But I want to introduce him so you know a little bit about him. Dr. Steve Ferguson is an established general practice physician with over 30 years experience in family practice with special interests in geriatrics, substance abuse, and preventative health care. He is well regarded in Northeastern North Carolina as a community athlete partner and Special Olympics champion, having provided thousands of free physicals for junior and high school students and students with special needs. In addition to his family practice, Dr. Ferguson is the past vice chair of the Old North Carolina Medical Society, an organization formed in 1887 to further the interests of African American physicians and continue to support the interests of minority physicians. Now, they focus on educating and advocating to the most vulnerable patients and people residing in communities that consistently produce poor health outcomes and seek to protect the quality of patient care in all of communities in North Carolina. And I would say that even in our area especially, that would hold true here. Dr. Ferguson is a local and national speaker on a number of topics, which include preventative health care and Alzheimer's disease. He is an ordained medical missionary, having served in Kenya, Africa. He has received several awards, including the Benevolent Advocate of Healthcare Award, Old North State Medical Society of North Carolina, the Outstanding Service Award, also from Roanoke Chowan Hospital, and a Certificate of Community Partnership, the University of North Carolina Institute on Aging, and the Bellflower Award for extraordinary, passionate caring for individuals with Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Ferguson is an avid photographer. He is a scuba diver, and he is a productive practice golfer. That's interesting. Yeah, productive practice golfer. I like that. That's a one step up from putt-putt, right? Now, he is married to Patricia, and they have 2 sons, Daniel, who is married to Nikki, and Joshua, and 2 grands, Danielle and Nicholas. Please welcome Dr. Stephen Ferguson. Here's his photography and work. He's going to actually record himself. Avid photographer.
That was a requirement from my wife.
It was okay. And you have to do, and then that's something important. You also do what your wife tells you. Oh, I know. The men are like, no, that's not how that happens. He's like, happy wife, happy life. But when you're an avid photographer, you have your own equipment, and most of the times it's the iPhone. Don't need very much. Okay, no problem. These are those moments where you have to work on the technical side of things. All right. There you go. You're welcome.
Well, it's always an honor and a pleasure when I get the opportunity to speak, because I enjoy speaking. So it's just a blessing. I thank Pastor Cole and his group for inviting me out to be a part of this wonderful event. It's truly an honor for me. And I always have to emphasize that, you know, medicine and the word have to go hand in hand. You know, what science does is prove the word. So they have to go hand in hand. And as opposed to doing a traditional talk and give you some statistics about the 10 causes of death and that men have the highest incidence of prostate cancer and such, I thought I'd be real practical because I want you to go home with some information that you can use today. And so I got to start out with this first thing, and I need 2 men to come help me real quick. I'm a visual kind of guy. So here, you sit here. You come on this side. So in the beginning, God created a man. He's supposed to be like this. And the man was nothing but dirt and minerals. And then what did God do? God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, what did they do to this man? They blew on him. And what happened after they blew on him? He didn't just come to life. He became a living soul. A living soul. Okay? So now we got the living soul. Now we got a man that's a living soul and the Holy Spirit. So those 3 come together to make man. Just as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are 3. Okay? So we're 3 in 1. And I start there because, okay, thank you, gentlemen. I start there because the Word says, Beloved, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. Okay, so what did I just say? Okay, so what's in your soul? In your soul, you've got your mind, you've got your intellect, you've got your emotions, you got your heart, and you got your will. All that's within the soul. And what you got over here in the body? You got a brain, you got the 5 senses, you got the skin, the organs. What you got over here in the spirit? You got the Father, you got the Son that was born of the Father, and the Holy Spirit that was produced by the Father. And all 3 of those come together. Okay? So what it is, let's go back to that scripture one more time. It says, Beloved, I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. So what does that imply? That implies that our soul has to prosper if we want those other two things to prosper. And so how do we prosper our soul? By the gifts of the Spirit: wisdom, word of knowledge, faith, healing, discerning of spirits, tongues, interpretation of tongues. And I think I missed one. But that's how we prosper our soul. And then once we prosper our soul, how does that get manifested in our body? By the fruit: the love, the joy, the peace, long-suffering, gentleness, meekness, temperance. Okay? So that's how it gets prospered. So it says, above all things, I wish that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. So I thought that was a great place to start. That's a really big topic. And I've been studying that topic for years and years to get to that point of understanding that I just gave you just now. So what's next? So now we got physical health, we have spiritual health, we have mental health. So I'll just briefly mention mental health. When men come into my office, most times they would never, ever, 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 ever say they have depression or they have stress. They come in like this. And I dig it out of them, and many times I find that they have some depression and that they have some stress issues. And so what are a couple of simple ways to go after that? Make a to-do list. Organization will help stress and depression every day of the week. Okay, this is simple solutions. So before you go to bed, write down what you got to do the next day. Things that you have to do, things that you might want to do, and things that don't have to get done. That's one thing to do. That can tremendously help stress just by being organized. Another thing I encourage you to do is while you're watching The Little Rascals, write down everything that causes you stress. Don't think about it, just write. Okay, now go back and put a solution next to some of those things. So one of those things might be, I get upset every time my wife leaves the top off the toothpaste. So what are our choices? Okay, we can fuss at her and put the top on it. We can put it on ourselves, or we can ignore it. Which one of those is going to be your better solution to not have that stress? Because people just don't understand that that's a big issue. They definitely don't understand that unforgiveness is a source of so many medical problems. Many, 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 many. But that's not my topic today. So let's talk about physical health. Okay? So when we talk about physical health, a couple things come to mind to talk about physical health. And the first thing that comes to mind is water. Okay? Men are 60% water, women are 40% water. So without water, you are clearly out of balance. And we don't want to be out of balance, right? So sometimes I have to play games with myself to make myself get enough water in. Sometimes I have to say every commercial, I'm going to drink a cup of water. Or I put 4 bottles of water on my desk to make sure I drink the water. And I say I can't leave the office the day all 4 bottles are gone. So water is crucial, and we must drink it. Now, I didn't say coffee, tea, soda. I said water. And most tap waters is actually pretty good, although bottled water has got a big crave out right now. Most tap water is pretty good. If you're that interested, get it tested. But most is pretty good, or we just get a reverse osmolality filter and put on your sink so you can get the water that you need. Water is a critical component of who we are. And your bloodstream, 82% water. Your brain, 80% water. Your heart, 75% water. Even your bones are 14 to 15% water. So you can see that water is critical. And when you get the right amount of water in, you can handle foggy thinking. You can handle complexion. You can have better joints, less arthritis. You can have better bowel movements. I always tell this when people say, why you tell that? But your bowel movement should be a foot long and float before it breaks. And you should go 1 to 3 times a day. And if that's not what you're doing, then you need to stop and evaluate your diet. Very, very important. Oh, you're welcome. Well, just a quick little side note. I don't want to take too many side notes here. But when I first started doing a lot of things with natural hormone therapy, I'd spent some time in Kenya, Africa, and I saw lots of worms. And so I really didn't think of adults in the United States having worms, but more data showed that maybe 20% of adults in the United States have worms. So I still didn't believe that. But I started treating patients with a Paraway pack, and boy, the results were incredible. One of the first women I treated was moving her bowels once a month. Since she was 15, she was now 45. She filled up her toilet 3 times with worms. Quick side note, back to the lecture. You know, weight is a big issue as well. So let's keep this practical. When I was in high school, I played football, basketball, track. I even was city champ in Golden Gloves. I weighed 165. And up until age 45, and I'm actually 64 now, up until age 45, I weighed between 165 and 175. No, I was good with that. And then I got to 185. I said, oh, something ain't right here. Then I got to 195. I said, wait a minute. Then I hit 200. I said, wait, this is just, I'm never leaving past this point. And I was good for a while, and then I got a little slack. And so Christmas time last year, I ballooned up to 213. I said, this is terrible. I gave myself a good licking, and I said, you will never see this number again. And so I'm now down around 200 with the goal of 190. And what did I do first? The most simplest thing you can do, and that's a daily fast. It doesn't get any simpler than that. You're already going to, and I say suggest fast from 6 to 6, 7 to 7, 8 to 8. If you want to get more aggressive, then go 6 to 10, 7 to 11, or 8 to 12. Now, you're already going to be asleep for 6 hours, so you're only doing something different for another 6 hours. And only water during that time. And the results are just, can be outstanding. I didn't say exercise, I didn't say change your diet, I didn't say anything else. I just said a daily fast. And why is the daily fast so important? Because it gets you into the keto zone. When you're in the keto zone, you can now burn fat. Now, how does it work? When you eat, your sugar goes up, your insulin goes up. Insulin drives sugar into the cell. Sugar comes down fast. Insulin takes a while to come down, maybe 10 to 12 hours. And so you're not going to really burn much fat until the insulin is near zero. This is the reason why most people don't have problem with weight or losing weight. They could have the best diet in the world, they could be exercising 5 times a week, but their weight doesn't change because they don't understand the relationship between sugar and insulin. It's a little different when you're diabetic. But if you're not diabetic, sugar goes up, insulin goes up, drives the sugar into the cell, sugar comes down fast, insulin comes down slow. So until you get into the keto zone, you're not going to really burn any fat. And if you really want to get to the keto zone, it takes about 3 to 5 days to get into the keto zone. If you're not diabetic, if you're diabetic, maybe 15 or 20 days to get into the keto zone. But once you're in the keto zone, it's a great way to lose weight. And, you know, it reverses what we've learned most of our life. It's 70% fat, 15 carbs, and 15 protein. And once you get to where you want to be, it could be 50% fat and 25 carbs, 25 protein. The biggest thing with the keto zone is watching the sugars. And you want to watch how much sugar is in the different things that you're eating. And then to make a whole different look at that, you heard about the blue zone. In the blue zone, they only ate meat about 5 times a month. And they had lots of very great diets. So it's a different process. So I'm talking about losing weight and getting to where you need to be. The other is talking about being healthy and staying there. So it's 2 different concepts. So now let's talk about, so we're talking about, you know, losing some weight and maintaining. So how do you decide what's your ideal body weight? If you're a woman, you start at 100 pounds for 5 foot. If you're a man, you start at 106 pounds for 5 foot. For women, you go up 5 foot per inch, and for men, you go up 6 pounds per inch. So a 5'3", a woman that's 5'3" feet tall, she should weigh 115 pounds plus or minus 15, 20 pounds. A man that's 6 feet tall, that would be 6 times 12, which would be 72. Add that to the 106, now you got 178. So 178 plus or minus 20 pounds. I put that plus or minus 20 pounds in there because people always say, I'm big boned. I say, okay, I'm going to put some extra in here for you. So that's why I put that extra in there so they won't have much to say about it. So when you look at getting to the ideal body weight, the next thing you look at, okay, how much water should I drink based on my ideal body weight? And I always emphasize ideal body weight because you take somebody that's 300 pounds, they can't do it based on half of that. An easy way to figure out how much water you need, and I like to keep things simple, is take your ideal body weight, divide it in half, and that's about how much water you need per day to sit on the couch and watch TV. And so, for example, if you weighed 150 pounds, divide it in half, that's 75 ounces, 64 ounces is a half a gallon. That's how much you need to sit on the couch and watch TV. So I try to keep things real simple. So hopefully you take that information, you can use it right away. Let's go a little further just in the diet issue. Reading your labels, whatever's first is what's most. So if you pick up some cereal on the shelf and the first item is sugar, then that's obviously one you want to leave on the shelf. Whatever's first is what's most, and so forth down the line. So the further down the line you see a sugar, the better. Protein bars. Protein bars, some are good. You need to look at how much sugar's on them. And again, you got to be careful because some of the protein can get converted to sugar as well. But look at how much sugar's in them and go from there. Another real common one that's easy to prevent, 70% of people, I get off medicine with what I'm getting ready to say, indigestion. Okay? Indigestion is a big issue. Now, I never had experienced indigestion. Now, let me give you a little story about myself. So at 5 years old, I started cleaning up my grandmother's house, so I made money. At 10 years old, I convinced 3 other kids to give up their paper routes, so I'd have 4 paper routes and make more money. At 11 years old, I started parking cars in the parking lot with my grandfather. Don't tell nobody. And so I've always had my own money. I've always been an entrepreneur. And so what do you think I bought with that money? Candy. So what do you think the candy got me? Cavities. So I grew up with many, many cavities. And later in life, I got a little more mature, and so I ended up having some root canals. One of my root canals went bad, and so for the first time, I was experiencing indigestion. And why was that? Because now I had a gap in my teeth, and where I wasn't chewing up my food so completely, and it was making it into my stomach, and then take more acid, more enzymes, and indigestion. So how do you prevent indigestion? Number 1, don't drink while you're eating, period. Number 2, avoid coffee, tea, soda, chocolate anywhere near a meal. All of those have caffeine, and caffeine will stimulate, you have a muscle right at the top of your stomach, a sphincter, and caffeine makes that sphincter get looser or more open, and so food can get from your stomach back up into your esophagus, now indigestion. Number 3, now if you drink while you're eating, your stomach is like an oven. What did your mom always say when you're growing up? Don't open the oven because the cake's going to fall. So what happened? Why would the cake fall? Because you changed the temperature in the oven. Now, when you eat something, when you drink something, your stomach is grinding up the food. It's got acid, enzymes in there. It's got a nice temperature so that you can grind up that food and digest it. But when you drink a cold glass of water while you're eating, you just change the temperature in your stomach. So now you got to get more acid, more enzymes. Now you got a bigger bolus in that stomach. Now you got more chance of getting indigestion. So don't do that while in time to eat. And the other thing, sit up for at least a half an hour after you've eaten. Then if you want to drink, you can drink half an hour after you've eaten. Sit up for 2 hours after you've eaten. But if you want to drink, then you can drink a half an hour after you've eaten. That will get 70% of people off of medication for indigestion. And I've proven it over and over again in my practice. It'll get 70% off. And one of the big reasons to get off is because long-term H2 blockers and proton pump inhibitors can lead to some decrease in kidney function. So you don't want that. And most times, and I'm guilty as well, you put a person on a proton pump inhibitor, H2 blocker, and you just leave them. You just let it be, and a year later, they're still on it. Well, I'm guilty, and it's a negative. I shouldn't do it. And so that's one of the things that can really be helpful in that process. A couple of things I have in a medicine cabinet. Medicine cabinet, Alka-Seltzer Plus, great for colds and flus. NyQuil, great for the cough. Echinacea vitamin C, great for you developing mild cold. Tylenol, Advil, good for pain, discomfort, inflammation. Gatorade if you're having nausea and vomiting. Pepto-Bismol if you're having diarrhea, nausea, vomiting. So those are good things to have in a medicine cabinet, but always check with your doctor first. Very important. Now, Pastor Cole, do we have a little more time? Because I want to get into my other lecture. Here's my favorite lecture. This is the favorite one I like to talk about. And this one is called Sex and Marriage. And this is aimed at the men. And women, I'm sorry, but I got to talk to the men. and I don't think many of your wives are here, so men could probably enjoy themselves. Most times when I do this lecture, I did it once with couples, and it was terrible. They all sat there like this. But when I do it separately, the men have a great time and the women have a great time. So that's a good lecture I enjoy doing. So, this is just the Cliff Notes, because this is a 4-hour lecture. But I'm going to give you like the 10-minute Cliff Notes of it. So, to oversimplify, what do women want? Okay? Think of PC piping. They want to feel protected. They want to feel valued. They want to be cared for. Okay, just make it simple. Keep things simple. They want to be protected, valued, and cared for. That's so important. And when you're talking about romance, romance to a lady is anything that makes their job easier. So romance will be taking out the trash, washing the dishes, helping the kids with their homework. Now, there ain't a man in this audience that think that's romantic. Not one. Okay? But women find that romantic because anything you do that's going to help them, they find romantic. Now, again, we don't find it that way, but we got to look at the way they look at it. So now, if you're fussing all the time and then trying to have sexual intercourse, that's a negative. Okay? Sexual intercourse should be pleasurable to both parties, not just one party. And when you're in that situation, it's usually a forced or controlled kind of situation, which is a negative situation. You don't want that kind of situation. So just be careful of that. And just remember that God designed sexual intercourse not just for pleasure and not just for having kids, but also for pleasure. You know, the Word tells us that the marriage bed is undefiled. Okay? That means it's got to be agreeable to both of you. Okay? It says anything could go, but don't, you got to watch for the crazy stuff. But if you can both agree on it, it can be acceptable. Okay? It says her breast should satisfy me all the days of your life. Okay? It didn't say your neighbor's breast. It said her breast, referring to your wife. Okay? It refers to a man and a woman being in marriage. It didn't refer to anybody else being in marriage. So it didn't say that you had a third party in there. I have a patient that he would look at pornography and masturbate and then go mess with his wife all night, and she just was so frustrated by this. She's the one that told me this. He didn't want the one that told me this. And so the marriage bed was designed for the husband and the wife. It wasn't designed for the extra. Libido. Sometimes libido can be up, sometimes can be down. Both men and women can have a decreased libido, meaning a decreased drive to be sexually active, but it's more often women than men. But if that is the case, there is treatment. I'm actually patent pending on a hormone imbalance product. I started dealing with hormone imbalance back in like 1998, right before the Women's Health Initiative came out, which said that, the hormones were bad, that the estrogen was bad, the progestin was bad, and I already had stopped using it like 3 years before that big study came out. When it came out, everybody said, what do I do? What do I do? I don't know, because women having hot flashes, night sweats, and all that kind of stuff. I was already doing natural hormone therapy. So after about 300 women of great success, there's no other place in my medical practice that I can come close to the success I have with natural hormone therapy. I don't know of any failures of people that did everything I told them to do. So just a huge success. And so the women start coming to me and say, I'm fine now, but what about my husband? I say, I have no data on your husband. There's none. I have the best and only data that started on natural hormone therapy at the patent office from 2004. So I did a study in my office. I had 40 men. 36 out of the 40 got back to either partial erection, enough to have sexual intercourse, or full erection. And that was just off the whim, saying, well, men and women have all the same hormones, so I'm having great success with the ladies. Let's see what happens with the men. And as a side note, one thing I did not find in any of my patients, that low testosterone was an issue. Okay? That started back in the 1940s. About 8 men had prostate cancer. They took off their testicles. The men got better. They probably got better because they got rid of the estrogen, not because they got rid of testosterone. I have never seen a man yet that had prostate cancer that had high testosterone. The 18-year-older has high testosterone, but they don't get prostate cancer. So that relationship, that trade is moving so fast. I don't try to stop it, but it's moving so fast with a direct relationship between testosterone and prostate cancer. I don't think that's the theory. I don't think that's that's definitely what I've seen in my practice, and I don't think it's accurate, but that trade is moving way too fast to try to stop it. Let's see what else we got here. Erectile dysfunction in men, okay? The older a man gets, the more likely they are to have some erectile dysfunction. Now, the erectile dysfunction could be caused for many reasons. You have psychogenic erectile dysfunction, and you have organic erectile dysfunction. So psychogenic is up in the head. You're nervous about it. I didn't perform last time. I hope I can perform this time. Those kind of things. Organic means something's going on at the penis level. Okay? Medications, diabetes, hypertension, overweight, stress, anxiety, all of those things can affect it at the penis level. But if you get some of those things in check, that can be helpful. Other things that are going to be negative for you men in the sexual intercourse process is when you think your wife is not interested. And many times she may not be. And you're the only one that's interested. And so that's all going on in your head. So that's a negative. So when you have to take your wife's clothes off of her, now automatically you say, oh, she ain't interested. So that's another negative to cause erectile dysfunction. If you've got the lights out, okay, as men get older, the sensation gets less in their fingers and they need to be able to see. So if the lights are out and you're under the covers, you're going to lose if you're already having trouble, because there's nothing to stimulate you to get it up because you can't see. So some of you men, you may have never had a conversation with your wives about this process in your life. If you can have one and change the process, it will tremendously help you. But you got to talk about it. You can't just all of a sudden start doing something you never did before and think it's going to be successful. But having to take her clothes off of her, that's a clear sign that she ain't interested. Her not letting you see her when she's naked is another reason why you may have sexual dysfunction. So when you talk about the foreplay, it takes about 10 to 20 minutes for the vagina to be ready for the penis. Okay? And when that happens, it goes from kind of a dull brownish color to like a light pinkish color like alcohol. And then the vagina is ready for the penis. So you may get a lot of pleasure from it, but she may not get the pleasure because she wasn't ready. So if it's possible, get the foreplay in place and be careful with that. You know, brush your teeth, get cleaned up. Don't just go to bed all smelly, okay? She don't want to be with some smelly guy, you know. And again, it says the marriage bed is undefiled. So it needs to be things that are pleasurable to both of you. So if you're not able to get an erection, then you can still bring her to an orgasm by stimulating the clitoris. About 30% of women will not have an orgasm without stimulating the clitoris. And that's that little thing right above where the vagina opening is. And that would have been a penis if she became a male. So it has the same kind of stimulation. It grows just like the penis does. You may not see it unless you're down there looking at it, but it grows just like the penis does. So you get some KY jelly or something like that on your finger to stimulate, because if you do it roughly, it's not going to be comfortable. And don't use Vaseline. No Vaseline. Okay, so and then the level that your finger can reach right into the vagina is called a G-spot. So if you hit that G-spot, along and stimulate the clitoris, you can bring the woman to an orgasm, even if you can't get it up. So, you know, and it might be pleasurable for you to see your wife be pleasurable, even if you can't get it up. So that's an important factor. Now, for those that are having problems getting it up, there's some things you can do. You know, there's the pills out there, the Viagra, the Cialis, all those, they're like the jumping cables. They get the car started, might get it home, might not get it home, but once it's home, it ain't gonna start. Okay? So they may or may not work. But if the car is not ready, it's probably not going to work. So a lot of things what I do with natural hormone therapy is I get the car right. I get the tune-up done. I get the car washed, all the points and the air, gas in it. And now if you still have problems at that point, then you could use something like that. But I'm always happy to see new patients in the office, you know. So you can come by and see me if you got these issues, and maybe we can get you grooving. I'm sure your wife will like you grooving. Maybe she don't want you to groove. You know, it's amazing how many people are tickled pink when their husband can no longer get it up. Because they didn't want to be sexually active in the first place, and so now ain't nothing to worry about. He can't get up, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you solve that problem. So if you're having problems getting it up, one of the things that may work for you is if you can get a partial erection, if you can squeeze the base of your penis enough, and then make sure lots of KY jelly so it can slide in. And the position that you need to get into is your woman's on her side, and you're on your side. She puts her top leg over your top leg, and your top leg goes over her bottom leg. So now the penis is as close to the vagina as possible. And now it's as close as possible, and now you possibly could squeeze the base of the penis and the KY jelly and possibly get it in enough to perform. But again, as you get older, the stimulation decreases So it not just decreases in your fingertips, your eyes, but also the stimulation and what it's going to take your penis to get out. So that might be helpful for those that can get a partial erection. But again, there's different positions are going to be more pleasurable to you, different positions are going to be more pleasurable to her. So if you're coming too quickly, you don't want any of the positions that are going to cause you to come too quickly. The position I just gave was for the erectile dysfunction. Positions that are going to be more pleasurable to the lady is anything that gets the clitoris stimulated. So if you're bumping the clitoris, doing that process, that will be more stimulating to the lady. But like if you're behind, the clitoris ain't being stimulated, so that's going to be less stimulating for her, maybe more stimulating for you. But that's important that you recognize that. So I think I'm going to stop there. Those are a couple little points. I'm happy to answer questions, dive a little deeper, but that lecture I really enjoyed doing. I just gave you the highlights. That was the Cliff Notes. But I enjoyed doing that lecture, and I usually get lots of interaction with the audience when I do that lecture. So thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. If I could answer some questions or you want to see me in the office, my office is right in the middle of Powellsville, which is about an hour and 10 minutes from here. I actually have quite a few patients that see me from Greenville because I do a lot with substance abuse, natural hormone therapy. Those are what probably bring most of the people from the furthest away, natural hormone therapy and the substance abuse. But geriatrics, Alzheimer's disease, I've got a lot of videos on YouTube. A lot of them are old, but the information is still good, particularly related to Alzheimer's disease. I've got a little section on natural hormone therapy. I call it hormone therapy. I don't call it natural because people don't go on the internet looking for natural. They look for hormone therapy. I got about 250 videos on YouTube. Most of the information is still good, although I haven't put any up lately. And again, as you heard in the beginning, my passion is photography. So if I'm not practicing medicine, I'm practicing photography. God bless.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ferguson. He helped you men a lot. Okay? Someone taught him well. You've studied well, Dr. Ferguson. In any case, you talked about a lot there. But I think some of the cliff notes that we can talk about is that spiritual soul that he mentioned. Of course, as men, your soul, so important. It's a blessing that you all are soul beings, and because of that, your soul is the first thing, that spiritual side of you. The physical, of course. He said you guys are 60% water. I didn't realize that. How fun is that? Talks about those bowel movements. What did he say, 1 to 3 times a day? Okay. And it had to float. Was that one of it you mentioned? Got to float? Okay. I like how you talked about the daily fast as well. Some guys probably are not thinking that, if they need to eat 3 to 4 meals a day, a daily fast, help you lose weight. The Blue Zone, which I think is also good, kind of worked in with that, talking about plant-based, losing weight, and then looking at the calculations. So you had us doing some math there with the calculations, where if you're 106 pounds for a man, if he's 5 feet, start there. And then for every inch goes 6 pounds. Include, okay, so if you're 6 foot, he said you should be 78 pounds. 178 plus or minus 20 pounds. Okay, I was listening. One other thing that I thought was very interesting about what you talked about in these notes here, indigestion, don't drink while you're eating, just no soda, coffee, tea, chocolate near your meal because of the caffeine, and the temperature of your food, then sitting up when you eat, like not going to bed right afterwards, because sometimes that's what we do. The sex and marriage, you all heard about that, the 10-minute cliff note. Some people, please go to YouTube if he has like a 4-hour class on it. Go to it. I can tell it's important.
I don't have that one on the internet.
Oh, put it on the internet, Dr. Ferguson.
When I first started doing this lecture, probably 15, 20 years ago, I started getting bombarded with porno sites. I must have had to block 300 emails because I was getting a porno site 5 a day hitting my email. It was terrible.
We'll have to find another way. Very good informative information that you gave there as well, but I think the first and the most important, what a woman wants, she wants to be protected, valued, and cared for. That was good. All right, so thank you so much. Let's give him another hand. Dr. Ferguson, thank you. And now I'm going to bring up three important, wonderful people who are going to give us our closing remarks before we leave, and then we're going to have our closing prayer as well by Dr. Bob, or Reverend Bob Hudak. But we want to bring up Tom Kay. We're going to also bring up Robert and Reverend Dr. Rodney Coles. If you all would come up for our closing remarks, please.
When I first started in my career, I remember one of my first bosses telling me that knowledge is power. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty profound. But as I've advanced in life, I tend to disagree with that, because I believe that shared knowledge is infinitely more powerful. And that's what we've experienced tonight. We've tapped into the knowledge of our presenters. They've shared it with us. And my request of you is to not hold that to yourself, but to share it with others. It becomes even more powerful, it multiplies. Things like what Dr. Michael said, that something like 50% of us will experience cardiovascular disease in our lifetime, but 80% of cardiovascular disease is preventable. Did I get that right? You know, things like that. That's what's really powerful. And I have to mention to Dr. Ferguson, you know, early in my career, I was a practicing engineer, so I got to do a lot of work on innovation and wrote patents and then scoured patents. But I got to believe that the research that I did was nowhere near as exciting as the research you got to do for your patent. One additional thing is the folks in the back with Clean Eats, they have plenty of food, so please, 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 we don't want to throw this away. So please take some home and share it with others. That'll be the first step in starting to sort of, that shared knowledge is even more powerful. And also, we have some of our sponsors in the back who have information there for us. Please, before you leave, take a few minutes to access that information. You'll walk out with more knowledge. You'll be able to utilize that to your best advantage. Dr. Michael also said one thing tonight. He said the ECU baseball coach preaches something called 1% better every day. And I'd heard about 1% better every day about 2 years ago. There's an athlete, young athlete, named Chris Nikic. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Chris. Chris set out to see if he could do something that had never been done previously for someone like him. So he wanted to do a triathlon. When Chris first started, if you know what a triathlon is, it's a 2.4-mile ocean swim, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, and then you only have to run 26.2 miles to finish it off, a marathon. So Chris wanted to do this. He was 18 years old. It took Chris 6 months to be able to bicycle 100 yards. Chris couldn't swim a length of the pool for almost a year. But Chris's motto was 1% better every day. And that's what he strove for. Was I can just be, he said, I can't be 5% better, I can't be 10% better today than I was yesterday, but I can be 1% better every day. So after 2.5 years of practice, Chris did the Ironman triathlon, the ultimate triathlon. And the time that you have to qualify in, if you don't finish in 17 hours, they shut it down. Chris made it in 16 hours and 45 minutes. And he's in the Guinness Book of World Records. Not because he's the youngest person to do it, but as Chris says, he speaks with a Down syndrome accent. Chris is a young man with Down syndrome. At the age of 21, completed the Ironman triathlon, and has gone on to do more triathlons. So Chris, if you know anything about Down syndrome, people with Down syndrome lack balance. They have problems with their inner ear, so the reason Chris couldn't swim very well was inner ear issues, getting water in there. He had balance issues, couldn't bicycle. But he found the fortitude by just committing to be 1% better every day to be able to swim an ocean swim at 2.4 miles, bicycle 112 miles, and run 26.2 miles. So what we found out tonight may be challenging for all of us, right? Some of the things that we've been shared with us this evening, some of the things that we want to commit to do. But think about what this young man aspired to do, what he was able to do. What we're going to be asked to do in comparison is nothing. We're going to be asked to make some lifestyle changes. Some small, but significant lifestyle changes. Change the way that we think about food. Change the way, the hours that we choose to eat. Change what we eat with our food or drink with our food. Change the way we look at, and it's activity, not exercise, right? Activity. It's just activity. Can you be more active? Rather than sitting and watching TV, can you take a walk? Can you do something simple like that? Can you park further away when you go to the grocery store? Can you use the steps rather than the elevator? Small changes yield big impacts. That's the message I took away from tonight. It's small changes that we can all make, that 1% better every day. It's going to have a profound impact on our life. Remember, men, it's not just our life. It's those that love us, those that care about us. We're positively impacting their lives as well. So thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you so much for your attention. Remember, get some things on your way out, some food, get some information, and go forth and be your best you tomorrow and every day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I just want to take a couple minutes to really thank each of you for coming out to attend this Fathers and Men conference. This is our third conference, and I'm excited when Pastor Coles and Tom, we started talking about health and men's health, and I know how important that is. So I really thank you for coming out. I thank all the speakers for coming out. We've got some good information around the blue zone and the keto zone, so those are things that I'll take back personally. Tom mentioned a couple of things. He mentioned knowledge. He mentioned shared knowledge was very important, but I want to take it one step further. Applied knowledge. We can know a lot of things, but until we apply it, it don't work. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is we talked a lot about preventive health. I want to talk about access to health. We've got some sponsors back there, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and 2008, the Affordable Health Care came into effect. And I had a young man come to my office. His name was, I'll call him Lilo. And Lilo was about the same age as I was at the time. And Lilo he was making too much money to qualify for Medicaid. He was making not enough money to qualify for the affordable health care. So Lilo was in this gap. And for every year for the next 4 years, we tried to get him access to health care. 4 years later, Lilo qualified for disability. By December, you know what happened to Lilo? Lilo had passed. Access to health insurance is so important. And that experience, just witnessing that, because Lilo was me. Lilo was my brother. Lilo was people that was in my family. So one of the things that I really want to press for is access to health insurance. We want to go out in the communities and explain to people how to access this. It's so important. It is so important. So many small diseases are killing our communities. You know, Lilo had diabetes and had a little bit of high blood pressure. But within 4 years, we talked about chronic diseases. Within 4 years, it had a big impact on him, and I know it had a big impact on his family. So a couple of things happened this year. Passing of their budget created the Medicaid expansion. Therefore, people have access to health care. We need to get that message out to people because it's important. You know, in a nation as great as the United States, it's a shame that everybody doesn't have access to health insurance. So I'm so happy that North Carolina now has opened that up. And that's our message going forward. Not only about preventive, not only about going to the doctors, but about access as well. So again, I really thank you for coming. I hope it was very beneficial. I really appreciate the speakers. It was amazing. Blue Zone, I'm buying the book. I'm going to scan the code. I want to be a part of that. Dr. Ferguson, I appreciate all the insight you gave us. You know, we'll be visiting your website and all that stuff, but again, I really thank you for coming.
Again, I thank each and every one who came out here tonight and all the speakers. Thank you. I also believe that a man needs to know who his wife is, and once you build those relationships, because I can tell you right now, when mama don't want to do it, mama won't do it. All right? And I can also tell you when she ain't going to cook, she ain't going to cook. And she going to let you know. And that's, I mean, that's our relationship. I understand. And when I travel, sometimes she doesn't go, but she always say, have fun. You know what I'm saying? But I want to say a lot about men's health is very important. And I'm going to speak a little bit brief about the African American men's. You know, we just came from a meeting earlier today. Tom and I was at a meeting that we are part of this meeting here. And we have so many men's in jail, and then they don't have health care. And then when they come out of jail, let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Is that when they come out, they get right back connected with drugs. And they can't seem to get a job. And when they get a job, they have that. What is really the whole purpose of Father and Men's and Real Men Talk? We are trying to input something into these men's life. This world have been so torn up, and I say this over and over again. The world is messed up because of the men's. The females had nothing to do with it. All right? It's us that destroy the world. And God knew he had to bring somebody to help us. He must have scratched his head. He said, this fool can't do it by himself, so let's give him a helpmate to help him through it. But we have to, Satan really goes after the male seed. We are duplicate of our kind. It's the male, and that's what he goes after. We got to get more health in them. We got to try to show them how to get off these drugs. We're going to continue pumping this information to these men as they come out of jail. It's amazing in jail. One of the pastors would say to me, yeah, I saved a lot of souls today. You know, the people gave their life in the jail. I said, they say anything in jail. You know what I'm saying? Wait till they get out and see what they do. But this is the constant thing and staying with them. There's so many men are lost. But we have to really look at they're lost because they're not connected to the Spirit of the Lord. They're lost, and they may have 4 or 5 different children. I had a young man come to my office who had 5 children, and they're not married, and he want to know why he's having all these type of trouble. When things not in decent and order, God never bless mess. Everything in our life need to be there, and keep them in the Word. So we need to make sure we're taking care of this temple. There's nothing that we have that we own. Everything you have is just for the day. It's just for the day. And we try to help them get through that. We're helping them getting jobs and keep getting them off the drugs and helping them to keep their health. So I want to thank all the speakers because that's what it's about. It's never been about money. It's been about making a difference. If you're not making a difference, then you're wasting your time by making a difference. So I thank each and every one tonight. I'm going to buy that book as well. I'm going to continue bringing this information to them. We have an e-blast that goes out. I'm going to put that book on the e-blast. People buy it. And if I got to buy it for them, I'll buy it for them. But we need to continue incorporating into men. And I will tell every male here, please grab some man that you may know and bring them. Bring them to the next one. Bring them to some of the things we're doing. They lost. They lost. They lost. You have heard mama boys, you got a bunch of them out here now. You see more females driving cars than you see males. And that's what we're dealing with today. They're lost, and they get incarcerated, they come out, they go right back in, they're doing drugs, they die for overdose. And these are things we need to continue, let them know that you got to get your health right, get your health right, get your life right, and God will continue, adding to you. But they just lost. And Satan taking them over and over again. My older brother died from HIV. He was in and out of jail. I had a little sister. She was always on crack. She passed. I did her eulogy last year. It's amazing what drugs is doing. And we could talk about Donald Trump. Who cares what he do? I mean, God's love him. I love him. God be love. Who cares what he's doing? But the point is, we need to focus on what we need to do today, and help others. Help others. Help these men. Help these females. There's no good men for the females now. They can't find a decent man. They taking anything to come home now. Taking anything. Man don't have no direction, don't know where he's going. If he don't know where he's going, and you ain't gonna know where you going. Everybody gonna go right into the ditch. It's like the blind leading the blind. But I just say that tonight and just thank each and every one of you that it was here. A lot of good information. Share with somebody. If you get an opportunity, grab one man, one young man, just have a conversation. I always say this, a personal touch is better than a preaching word. If you could spend time with somebody and give them a word. You don't know what no one is going through. We don't know. We don't know they lost their job. We don't know they got cancer. They lost their mother. We don't know. We don't know. We can say mental health. We all got a mental illness. You look at yourself. We all kind of nutcase. But the point is, what are we doing to try to make a difference? And that's what I'm about. What I'm doing here to make a difference in life. And so I thank each and every one of you. I'm not going to keep you no longer. But I would like to, before we close out, we're going to have a prayer from Reverend Bob Hudak. But also just a reminder, please, there's some food left back there. If you full, take it to somebody. This is healthy food. Take them a plate of food. You never know who you may bump into. Take them some food. It's there. It's already taken care of. And we also like to have every speaker, after Reverend Hudak done the benediction, we'd like y'all to come up because the photographer will take a picture of all of you. And I thank y'all the words you came. And Dr. Steve Ferguson, I have no, y'all know, he's amazing. Sometimes you think it's a mistake. I bumped to Dr. Ferguson because the number I had is James Corbett number. Ain't that something? And you came to my office at 1206 Evans Street. And we've been friends ever since. Been friends ever since. Well, thank God. And thank each and every one. I'm going to get off this mic here, but I thank you. But please, just trying to understand, it's not about just having food and good conversation and help. We need to do more. Amen.
Our interfaith clergy standing for the community, in our vision and mission, it's about relationships. Mm-hmm. And Pastor Coles, I already told Dr. Bowen I'm going to buy the Blue Book. I heard you say you're going to get it. You know, we have been in touch very closely, and I'm going to ask you to hold me accountable that I put into practice. We meet often, we talk often, mm-hmm. and if I may do that for you, but that's what we need to do. We need to start with the 1%. 1%. And we're in that. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a short blessing. I just want to say, listening to all of our sisters and brothers in the medical world, with all that you do for so many of God's people every day, I thought, thank you. I thought what a saintly man in the 2nd century, in the early days of the church, said that the glory of God is revealed when people are fully alive. And you have given us a new blueprint of just looking at one of the ways that each, in our own way, with the gifts and diversity that God's given us, to be fully alive. And I've often wondered, I'm going to say this, Dr. Ferguson, reading Genesis, in the beginning, God created, put soul into Adam and Eve. I wonder what instructions he really gave them as he sent them forth, and I heard it today. You got, what you shared with us is, I suspect, what God told them to do as they went forth to be fruitful and to share equality as a husband and wife moving into the future. Thank you. And it was vitamin C that you were encouraging us in the last message I heard you share a few years ago. It is. So, very simply, life is short. We don't have much time to gladden the hearts of those who walk the path of life with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind, and listen to that spirit that is nudging us to feed body, mind, and spirit with the nourishment that will help us to be fully alive servant leaders, strong, loving, and kind in the world that we live. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.